first thing I wanted to do before making the framework was to make the ghosts. This was to help me with sizing. I used wire bent into shape to create the framework for the ghost, using a picture that I'd drawn as a reference. My drawing's not the best, but it did the job. The outer layer of the ghost was actually made from a piece of cloth, very thin cloth, that I dipped into watered down PVA glue at a mixture of around 50-50. I did check that the cloth was big enough once folded into quarter to cover completely the metal framework. I decided to pad out the framework with a bit of kitchen roll just to give it a little more shape for the fabric to hang across and create a more realistic shape. I used just a little bit of masking tape to hold the tissue in place. Once I was happy with the body shape, I draped the fabric across the body shape and tightened it around to make it the right shape. I trimmed across the bottom to make it even, and then I dried it using a heat gun from a slight distance to avoid burning it. Once the ghost was dry, I used a Sharpie to mark out the eyes. Using the measurements that I'd created, I cut out 2 identical size pieces for the top and the bottom of the base and 2 smaller squares for the sides. I also cut out a piece for the back that was slightly thinner card, and then I used tape to stick them all together. I used masking tape to tape them together, ensuring I left a slight gap between the 2 pieces. I measured and cut a circle out of cardboard that was big enough to sit both of my ghosts on. This is going to be one of the turning pieces. I marked the location of the turning circle onto the base and also measured out the centre to ensure that the hole in the centre would be lined up. I measured from the back of the base to the hole and then transposed these measurements onto the sides to ensure that the horizontal dowel would be evenly spaced and also align with the dowel coming down from the turning circle. After cutting out the holes, I placed a dowel into the horizontal place marks, ensuring that the dowel was slightly longer at each end to allow for attachments to them. I attached a smaller circle to the base of the turning circle to allow a small dowel to be supported and glued into place. I made the first cam by cutting out 3 identical size circles and also marking out the centres of them and gluing them all together. As this cam was going to roll against a second cam, I wanted the edge to be smooth, so I cut out a piece of thin cardstock, the right width, and then glued this into place. The second cam was going to be the one that sits on top of the first cam. I created this in the same manner as the first cam, but instead of creating a smooth edge, I wanted a smooth base. After a bit of experimentation, I discovered that using a bit of felt on the base of this provided a good grip. So I actually put a strip of felt along the edge of the first cam and the base of the second cam. I found that while the movement worked, it did move around quite a bit, so I did insert a cardboard collar on the underside of the base to hold the vertical dowel into place a bit more securely. I used beading wire to create the headpieces for the ghosts and then used little pieces of felt for the devil horns and then just glued them into place. I measured out a long strip of card at the height that I wanted the little cans to be, and I used this to make 2 identical size cans. I curved the card to make it roll easier, and then I rolled in either side evenly all the way to the centre to ensure that both cans were the same thickness. After cutting the cans into 2 pieces, I wrapped them in a piece of masking tape each, and then I used Sharpies to decorate them. The straws were made by rolling a thin piece of white card into a tight circle and then inserting this into the centre of the can. The cans were just attached to the ghosts using a tiny little drop of hot glue. I covered all of the pieces of card with coloured cardstock to make it look more attractive. After deciding on the placement of the ghosts, I used a little bit of hot glue on the wire of the feet to hold them into place. I added a piece of masking tape around the end of the dowel to help me with the dowel placement. This was a temporary marker and I changed this out for a piece of cardstock later on. To create the background picture, I drew items and then cut them out after colouring them in and then stuck them onto the black background. I had to make the tree trunk hollow to ensure that the dowel was able to move up and down freely inside of it. So the first thing that I did was to create a sleeve for the dowel to sit inside. The branches were made by twisting strips of brown paper around wire. The wire helps to keep its shape and the brown paper creates a really good effect for the bark. This cam was made in the same way as the previous two, however I made this into a snail shell type shape to facilitate the little drop. I did this by creating a circle and then drawing another circle from the centre of the first circle. Once I was happy with my tree placement, I marked out where the centre was and I cut this out very carefully using the tip of my scissors. I measured the drop of the cam and cut out a hole to facilitate the spider being able to move up and down attached to the dowel. I used a small rectangle of thin plastic to attach the spider to the dowel and have it away from the tree slightly so that it didn't catch. I marked out a slight groove into the dowel to help the piece of plastic sit in the correct place. Once the glue was dry, I wrapped the piece of plastic around the dowel to help it slide into the trunk of the tree, and then once it was in place I twisted it to find the gap in the tree and let it come out. The spider's body was made by threading 2 small black beads onto a little piece of wire and twisting into place. I attached 4 pieces of wire bent in half and glued them onto a small piece of felt. This created the spider's legs. I then attached this to the spider's body and bent the legs into the correct shapes. I was happy with the spider's shape, I glued it to the piece of plastic attached to the dowel. To create the dowel's handle, I created an oval by drawing 2 circles, one spaced half a circle away from the other and joining the tops of the 2. I cut out a hole all the way through the centre of the first circle and halfway through the centre of the second. This would be to attach the second dowel. After covering the pieces in decorative cardstock, I attached the small dowel through the hole that went halfway through. This will be the little handle, and then the second hole is to attach it to the main dowel.